Families broken and the future stolen. So I ask you, President Trump and members of Congress, why do we continue to cover up sexual abuse and assault? Who are we covering for? Let the public know the truth. We cannot heal without justice. We cannot protect the future if we refuse to confront the past. Thank you.
Let's just give a round of applause for all the courage and strength that the survivors have shown. We now will take a few questions. You can always get Congressman Massey, me, or Congresswoman Green in the hallways and other places. If you have questions for us, that's fine. But I wanted to see first if you have questions for the lawyers and the survivors, and Brad will facilitate any of the questions to the survivors. Yes?
Yeah. This question would be for the survivors, Mr. Edwards. The president has said that this Epstein issue is a hoax, is the words that he used. Can we get your reactions to what you think when you hear him say that?
Oh, I'll answer that. Mr. President Donald J. Trump, I am a registered Republican, not that that matters because this is not political. However, I cordially invite you to the Capitol to meet me in person so you can understand this is not a hoax. We are real human beings. This is real trauma.
What does it feel like emotionally to hear that?
Devastating.
It's being gutted from the inside out. Not that I would know what that feels like, but I imagine it's the anxiety buildup with the depression and the survival mode, and then your nervous system goes limp and ironically is shot, and it feels like you just want to explode inside because nobody, again, is understanding that this is a real situation. These women are real. We're here in person. To say that it's a hoax is just not. Please humanize us. I would like Donald J. Trump and every person in America and around the world to humanize us, to see us for who we are and to hear us for what we have to say. There is no hoax. The abuse was real. Now, what goes on behind closed doors, I can't speak for that. What happens around the world politically, I cannot speak for that. But I am here with all of these women, including our attorneys, and I would be more than happy to meet with him, and I will meet him halfway.
Ms. Edwards, I wonder if any of the victims could respond to the news from recently about Ghislaine Maxwell being transferred to a lower security prison in the aftermath of speaking to Todd Blanche.
You want that one?
About her transfer to
transfer.
Oh, yeah. I'm happy to speak to that. We were horrified to learn that she had been transferred to a prison camp. She is someone who was found guilty by a jury of sex trafficking. She not only, we often hear that she procured women for Jeffrey, which I think is a very sort of polite and minimizing term. She also participated in the abuse. She was a major architect of the scheme. And the fact that she has painted herself as a victim, I think is disgusting. And it was horrifying, I think, to us that we were not told about her prison transfer. We found out about it in the news. 1 minute, I think Anushka maybe has something.
So, Anushka DeGiorgio, I testified alongside Annie at the trial of Ghislaine Maxwell. I was horrified when I found out not only had Ghislaine Maxwell been transferred to what's called a low security. It's really is like a holiday camp, and then afterwards I got a notification from the Department of Justice telling me that this was going to happen when it had already happened. This woman abused children. I was abused by Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell for over 10 years. Ghislaine Maxwell was present for some of my abuse at the hand of Jeffrey Epstein. She was present, she was complicit, she was enabling, and it is appalling and disgusting. And it's one of my worst nightmares that she not only be transferred, but at the possibility that's very much going around that she might be pardoned. This is not okay, guys. This is not okay.
And I just want to add that I think it sends a very dangerous message to our country, to the young people in our country, that someone that we all know is aware of these crimes could be given a pass.
And just for the last survivor who just spoke, the last survivor who just spoke, she said that Epstein would brag about her relationship with Donald Trump. Could she please elaborate about that?
Shante.
To the microphone.
Get close.
Yeah, I did say that. My first trip to the Palm Beach residence, I drove there from the airport with Ghislaine Maxwell, and Jeffrey and Ghislaine were always very boastful about their friends, their famous or powerful friends, and his biggest brag forever was that he was very good friends with Donald Trump. He had an 8x10 framed picture of him on his desk with the two of them. Like, they were very close.
Go ahead. One second.
He called on me. For this client list that you ladies are putting together, you said it would be confidential, but could you clarify, will the public get to see that?
So Lisa, what's your envision here?
Is it going to go to the public or just amongst the survivors?
No, we're reaching out to survivors that are scared.
So come on up.
We're reaching out to survivors that are scared to come forward and that also know who they were trafficked to. So that's the list that we're compiling. We're not quite sure, how we're going to release that, or even if we're going to. The Department of Justice needs to release the list.
Right, because for folks at home, they might be confused. The survivors know the names. You've seen these powerful people. Why can't you say the names? Could you just explain for folks?
Why do we have to say the names when the government knows the names? And we're also scared to do so. Look what's happened to so many of the survivors that have revealed names.
I find the question about the bill.
I think it's also worth saying that having represented, I think, between our firm and Boyce Schiller, hundreds of victims, and we've talked to them about the various people that they were farmed out to. So we've created somewhat of a list. Most of these individuals, the victims, are very scared to say these names because they could get sued, they're going to get attacked, and nobody protected them the first time. And that was against one person. So is there a list? There is a list, but just to dispel kind of the common theme here, every one of these women was abused by Jeffrey Epstein, and his scheme was to personally abuse women. When they reached a certain age, he did farm a section of them, some of them, out to some of his friends. That doesn't mean all of his friends. With that said, I'm more than happy to assist in helping create the list behind the scenes and see what we do with it.
But if someone's interested,
Go ahead.
Hold on. I think if someone's interested in prosecuting, they may have something different to say about sharing a list. But they're not sharing a list for nothing to happen, and that's the experience that they've had for all of these years.
Thank you all. We're waiting to see the fate of this discharge petition right now as we're here. The speaker and others have said that the people he met with yesterday had concerns about your names being released if this bill were passed. And some people I talked to today are not signing the discharge petition because they say you don't want them to. Can you clarify if that is accurate?
Do any of the survivors here not want the bill to pass?
Yeah.
First of all, our legislation, Ro Khanna and I went through this, we talked about this, and we were very careful to make sure that there is an exception so that personally identifiable information, not just their names, but anything they could be identified by, would not be disclosed.
And can you speak to that as survivors yourself?
I think all of them are on the same page. That they want everything released.
Want the bill to pass.
Yes, they unequivocally redact personally identifying information and release everything else. Okay.
So, Mr. Edwards, thank you. I know it's your first time speaking. I'll go to Marina if we can.
Yeah, sure.
Marina, you have stayed silent for so many years. Today, this is the first time, if we understand correctly, you have never before gone public with your story and to share this. Can you help us understand why today, why now, and why here?
Well, it is not okay for us to be silenced, and it's not okay for Jeffrey Epstein and everybody else to be put on a pedestal. I think everybody needs to hear from us because we know what went on, right? And there is not only me who's been silenced, there are hundreds of women that are silenced. My hope is to
stop this abuse for the future, right? For people that are coming up, for women. My daughter, for example, these women have daughters. They most definitely don't want that anymore. And I think mainly this is therapy for all of us too. You know, we want to be heard. Nobody also has never asked me to speak. That's also another thing. So I can say for all of us here, we are here. We want this bill to pass. It is very important. Okay, and we need transparency. We are tired of looking at the news and seeing Jeffrey Epstein's name and saying that this is a hoax. We are tired of it. We are done. We're not going to be silenced, and I hope that my voice will bring other survivors and other victims to come along and speak up so that we can be more of a stronger voice and louder.
And so what is your message to President Trump on this, Maria?
Listen, I don't want to send a direct message to him. I'm already scared enough. Yeah, just pass the vote, listen to us. This is not a hoax. Like, it's not gonna go away. And like I said on my speech earlier, we're not gonna be silenced anymore. We will be speaking moving forward. Wherever we need to be, we will be, and we need to pass this.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Sarah. Jordan Conrad from Gateway Pundit. You know, for years we've heard that there was an Epstein client list or some kind of a list. And now we hear from the DOJ that there's no list. Question for all the victims: what do you guys think? I know you're working on your own list, but do you believe that Jeffrey Epstein had a list?
Yeah. So there's not a list.
Yeah.
So here's what it was. Just like you heard everybody today, Jeffrey Epstein created through an organization that of enablers, of people that were on his payroll. It was a complicated scheme where others should still be investigated because they helped to enable him and operate this scheme. Without those people, he could not have done this. But the purpose was for him to personally abuse people. With that being said, certain of his friends, he farmed out certain of the women that he was exploiting too. But that wasn't the primary purpose of that scheme. And I don't think he wrote the names of those people down. There's not a list of, hey, here's all of the people that I sent females to. That's just not how that organization works.
Mr. Edwards,
Agreed?
is there any evidence that Jeffrey Epstein was involved with or tied to the CIA or a foreign intelligence operation?
I think that the safest thing for me to say is all files should come out, whether it is for this with the CIA, FinCEN, SEC, FBI. I'm not just making these up haphazardly. I'm giving you a roadmap where to look.
So,
Go ahead.
The Daily Caller. I was going to ask you, the White House has said that this discharge resolution is a very hostile act. What's your response to the victim's response? And thank you all for being here.
I'll go first and then I'll let them. They're much more important than me, but I don't understand why it's a hostile act. I can tell you that I talked to President Trump back in 2009, and several times after that, he didn't think that it was a hoax then. In fact, he helped me. He got on the phone. He told me things that were helping our investigation. Now, our investigation wasn't looking into him, but he was helping us then. He didn't treat this as a hoax. So at this point in time, I would hope that he would revert back to what he was saying to get elected, which is, I want transparency. This about face that occurred, none of us understand it. In fact, I don't understand how this is an issue that's even up for debate. How do you not stand behind these women after you've heard their stories and know that hundreds of them were abused, and it was only because files are being kept in secrecy? The world should know who he is, who protected him, and the other people that are out there to be investigated need to be investigated.
Sir, question for Ms. Davis.
Are there any people who are currently serving in government who are named, who you know of, are in these files, who you had relations with, anything of that sort, who Jeffrey Epstein connected you with? Are you willing to say yes or no?
I don't think I can answer that.
Mr. Edwards, right here, please. Mr. Edwards,
sorry.
Mr. Edwards, you represent Virginia Roberts Dufresne, correct?
Because they're saying they're being scared to talk.
I think she's referring to my speech. She's very good.
Hi, Anushka DeGiorgio. I have been threatened. I was threatened by phone. My daughter was threatened when I was volunteering to participate in, by means of being a witness in a civil lawsuit that Virginia Dufresne was bringing against Ghislaine Maxwell. I have been followed. I have been stalked. I have been followed not only by journalists, but by people who do not get out of the car and do not try and talk to me and just drive behind me as I drive my daughter to school. So the fear is very real for us. I have also been in multiple situations with both Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell where they have been direct and indirect about implying and saying that if I was to talk, if I was to bring any kind of trouble, then there would be severe consequence, including death.
Just to add to that, Maxwell also threatened my sister Maria Farmer. When the FBI did nothing about her initial report, we did. She reported individually at that time, and then in 2002, we spoke to a reporter at Vanity Fair, telling our stories, fearful that perhaps other people were being harmed. We were not. We believed that was going to make a difference. We believed that would be put in print, and that story was crushed. And it was because of their power, and the message that we got from that was direct threats from Maxwell to my sister about her well-being and her safety and that of our family. So I think many people have similar stories of threats. That has been a very real part of this case.
Mr. Edwards, go ahead, over here.
Do any of today's survivors speaking, did anybody here ever have any connection or interaction with Epstein's alleged financier, Leslie Wexner?
No. Do you want to address that?
I just want to say one thing that's very clear when people say, please share names. There are names that are very well known, like that of Les Wexner, who everyone knows supplied an enormous amount of Epstein's, financial wealth and allowed this operation to happen. So it's, I think, confusing to many of us why there have not been more ramifications for him, and he's been seen as a victim when clearly, I believe there's more to it.
Mr. Edwards, right here, please. Mr. Edwards?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you represented Virginia Roberts Giuffre for many years. She eventually had to recant the allegations that she made against Alan Dershowitz. She alleged that on at least 6 occasions.
All right, next question.
Next question.
Thank you.
Who's next?
Why is it that she should be
Yeah, no, we're not answering your question. Anybody else?
Go ahead.
How did the victims feel about the interview that was given to Ghislaine Maxwell by Todd Blanche?
Why aren't you going to answer my question?
Okay, ma'am, I think that you had a question.
When you
You're
talked
not
in
good.
the past
They
on
just avoided my
MSNBC,
question. You don't care?
when you talked in the past on MSNBC about the existence of the Epstein birthday book, have you yourself in the course of litigation seen it?
I don't know that we're able to reveal what we've seen and what we have not seen by way of protective order, but my point being in that circumstance was, if anybody wants answers, there's an easy place to get it. I told you where to get it. I said the estate of Jeffrey Epstein has it, serve a subpoena on them, they'll turn it over, and if we had served a subpoena on them in the past, they would have turned it over and we would have seen it, which I don't usually miss subpoenas like that, so there we go. Go ahead.
Just say one thing on there. To your question about the allegations, there's a simple answer. Release the files. Let the American public decide. Instead of harassing, instead of, I gave you your say. Look.
Against a prominent individual, among others. You're hired by Dershowitz. And then had to admit
But,
other counsel.
he knows
what I'm talking about. That contained hugely salacious allegations against a whole
You've been heard. You've been heard.
Shouldn't you tell the public about this?
You've been heard. And even Alan Dershowitz says to release the files. Release the files. That is the answer, and that's what we're here for. And that is the.
Can you elaborate on that? You said that Donald Trump gave you help in 2009. Can you elaborate on your interactions with Donald Trump back in 2009? And for any of the victims, they didn't ever see the president, but then not president yet, but they never ever see Trump with Epstein in any way.
I don't know who's. I don't think that we can answer that question. Did anybody see Trump with Epstein back then? This is really not a political thing. We want the passage of the bill, and this is not to call out President Trump.
What about your interaction with Trump?
My point was that he was friendly back then, did not think that it was a hoax, and was trying to help. And now it seems like all of a sudden somebody's in his ear and he's not. So I'm hoping he'll come back to where he was back in 2009, be on the side of the victims and stand with us.
On the passage of the bill,
Go ahead.
I would.
Teresa will step up.
I would, Teresa J. Home. Happy to speak on that because
what I will say is she got this airtime and platform. Her voice was elevated way before our voices were elevated here today. And that same calm, manipulative voice that she had so polite there that day with Todd Blanche was the same polite, coercive, manipulative voice that I heard as she was grooming me to then send me off to the home of Jeffrey Epstein where he would assault me. So that's what she was doing for hours, speaking with me, building relationship with me, building trust with me, allowing me to believe that I was going to get this job, a dream job that I had been recruited from my college, flown across the country from Los Angeles to New York City to interview, so I thought. So her voice that day was the same voice that sent me off to a monster. So nothing can be believed from what she says because she's been charged with perjury. I myself could sit there and listen, and as I did, I sat there and listened to this woman's voice lie. And there was no pushback from Todd Blanche because does he even have the facts to be able to push back on her? We could sit there and push back. Why didn't we get to attend that? Why weren't we there that day? Or why wasn't even one of us consulted prior to that day in that meeting? And why on earth has she been moved from Florida to her, it basically is prison spa. I mean, you know, let's be real. None of us were consulted. I found out just like everyone here found out through the media, through all of you. We found out about Ghislaine's transfer. So I'm very angry to sit there and listen. The feelings that come up listening to this woman's voice is repulsive. Yes, I would say it's triggering. We all work very hard on healing, and it still gets to us after 2 decades. It's a very long answer, but it's repulsive to sit there and listen to her voice in her interview.
Can we take two more questions? One over here.
My reporting in Vanity Fair directly led to a $100 million payment from J.P. Morgan to the Virgin Islands. Will you go after the DOJ, the FBI, because they're sitting on evidence? I've held the evidence in my hands. Can you speak to that?
I think that there's nobody that's immune from us going after them if there's a legitimate action to take. So to the extent that that evidence exists, then show it to us and we'll help in every way we can. We stand with the victims. Okay. One more.
Can the survivors speak to speaking of being threatened and being afraid to come forward with a story to the case of Katie Johnson, who alleged that Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein?
I don't think we can talk about. I don't think we can talk about that case. I do think it's worth saying, though, despite the comments that he made, Virginia Roberts Giuffre is an American hero. She is somebody without whom we would not be able to have this voice. She was the one who had courage to name names, speak out against people, and she was standing up against everybody at one time with an enormous amount of pressure.
And most of these women are here because of Virginia Roberts Giuffre.
All right, last one.
Johnson says he's protecting the innocent. Who one of the victims say who they think the innocent people are that he's protecting in his mind?
Clearly not us.
I don't think that anybody knows, but I can tell you that in the oversight committee meeting yesterday, they indicated that they were all for transparency, releasing the files, and asked us to hold them accountable. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
They said hold them accountable, so we intend to hold them accountable. We're going to show them where to go with it, and as long as they're doing their job, they should. I'm going to turn it back over to Ro Khanna. Thank you.
Let me just say this. Let me say this. I think the people back who are testifying here today or speaking out today, they are American heroes. Let's give them another round of applause. And you say, look, Thomas, Marjorie, and I, we're huge believers in the First Amendment, and we believe in free speech, and we take abuse all the time. But you see why it's so hard to do what they have done. because they come forward and you subject yourself to national scrutiny and national questioning. And I just want to say from the bottom of my heart how appreciative I am and how proud I am of what you've done today. You made a big difference. Before I bring on Marjorie and then Thomas will have the last word, I want to summarize 3 basic things that I heard from the survivors. First, they want to know why our government covered up for someone rich and powerful. Why is it that we have 2 Americas? People say, why do you need to release the Epstein files if Epstein is dead and Maxwell is in jail? Because we don't know who all was involved in the cover-up. Why are there rich and powerful people who didn't have justice? They want to know that. Second, many
So look, as we mentioned, Congresswoman Grijalva's first act after being sworn in yesterday.
Used to their benefit to get as a child. These are not numbers, they are people.
This is one thing that we can come together on.
Yeah.
And I was very clear with Thomas, this is not against President Trump. I would like nothing more than a Truth Social post for him after this press conference saying just release the files. Be with Massey Kana. This is about something much deeper. It is about bringing this country together to stand for America's kids, to restore trust, and to move this country forward. So thank you to the survivors for helping us do that. Now I want to introduce Marjorie Taylor Greene. Thank you.
Thank you. For everyone watching at home, I think it's important to put yourself in these women's shoes. As you're questioning, why can't they just name the names? What you don't realize is they just told their stories of being raped and being abused, being victimized, being manipulated, being coerced, and basically held in a prison of captivity of sexual abuse while they were young teenagers and extremely young, vulnerable women. And in Jeffrey Epstein's home and the places they went with him, they saw the most powerful people in the world in his pictures, and they saw him with those people. Can you imagine how terrifying it would be to name names like that? These are some of the richest, most powerful people in the world that could sue these women into poverty and homelessness. Yeah, it's a scary thing to name names, but I will tell you, I'm not afraid to name names. And so if they want to give me a list, I will walk in that Capitol on the House floor and I'll say every damn name that abused these women. I can do that for them, and I'd be proud to do it. Now, another thing, this is not about politics, and this is a boiling point in American history where the American people, just like Roe just said, there's become 2 Americas. There's the America for the rich and the powerful and the elite, where they never face any struggles or problems and never experience what real America goes through. And then there's forgotten America that faces all the problems and deals with all the issues and never gets justice for being sexually assaulted and raped by a monster. It shouldn't exist anymore, and people are sick of it. So let's recognize the fact that the administration before and the one before it and the one before it and the one before it and before it never did anything about this. So this isn't one political party or the other. It's a culmination of everyone worked together to silence these women and protect Jeffrey Epstein and his cabal. And this is not just rich, powerful people. Think his drivers, his maids, his chefs, all the people, people that worked in his home, security guards. I heard one story from a young woman that was being raped by Jeffrey Epstein when he was out on work release while he was serving time in prison and had an ankle monitor on his leg. Guess what? There was a police officer outside that door. So this list of names is quite a list of names, and it doesn't extend just in the rich, powerful circles. It extends down to the very bottom.
where people were paid. And again, I will say this, there's victims suffering today in similar circumstances, and they're terrified to name the names of the people that are currently abusing them. And so with these brave, courageous women fighting this fight, this is a fight for women and children and any person that is facing sexual abuse and rape and captivity and human trafficking right now. And so here's what I ask you in the press. Don't go for salacious headlines. Go for the truth and defend these women and help those of us in Congress that are crossing our political party lines for doing the right thing and trying to do it together. And thank you, Ro, and thank you, Thomas. And now I recognize Thomas Massey from Kentucky.
Well, there's 3 branches of government, and we're supposed to keep each other accountable. And that's what we're doing here today in the People's House. We're standing in front of the People's House with real people, not a hoax. And they've told their story. We wanted to give them a platform to speak, and they've had it. They stepped up, and they were brave. But I also today hope that they would persuade my colleagues to join this effort. But I found out something today that happened that I wasn't expecting. They persuaded me to fight even harder. I'm not going to give up. And I want to end with this call to action. First, a call to action to my colleagues who, just an hour before this press conference, were prepared. They were given a fig leaf. We'll put a resolution on the floor so that you can say that you voted to protect the survivors. Their resolution doesn't really do anything. And that's the oldest trick in the swamp. When you want to kill the momentum, when you want to kill initiative, you introduce a placebo, a different bill that does nothing, and then try to pull the wool over the eyes of the American people. That's not going to happen this time. We demand real accountability. I encourage my colleagues, please, there's over 200 Republicans who have not signed this discharge petition. We only need 2 of them to sign it, and every Democrat will sign it, and that will get us the number we need to force this vote, to pass a law, not a polite request to the DOJ to police themselves. No, we need legally binding legislation to force that to happen. And my main call to action is to the people watching these live feeds that are going through these cameras right now. Congressmen, listen to you. Light up their phones. Burn down the phone lines here in Washington, D.C. Ask them the questions that these survivors wanted you to ask them. Why won't you be for transparency? Don't accept their answer that the bill has a flaw or that the survivors don't want it. We know that's not true. They wouldn't be fighting it so hard in this town if it wasn't the real bill. So with that, please call your congressman. Tell him or her to get on this bill and to stand up for these survivors. Thank you and God bless. That's the end.
Thank you guys very much. This is unbelievable. Thank you so much.
Congressman Massey. Congressman Massey.
Thomas Massey, what's some of the kickback you're getting back from your colleagues? What are some of the reasons why they don't want to endorse this?
They're being threatened. I mean, look, I've got $2 million of ads running against me back in my district, and it's funded by 3 billionaires. One of them's in Epstein's flat. I mean, this is what happens. Your consultants, your political consultants will abandon you when the White House gets mad at you. The speaker will block all of your bills, they'll shut down your fundraising. This isn't political, but it is. I mean, the opposition to this is very political.
What's your impression of what's the president of the White House seeming to whip against this vote so actively?
I have no idea why they're doing this. I do believe they're trying to protect the people who are rich and powerful and connected, like Republican governors.
Speaker Johnson.
He's just doing what the White House has done. He was for transparency for about 24 hours, and then he got tuned up by the White House.
Have you had a chance to look at the Iraq emails that were leaked over the last week? And Jeffrey Epstein's involvement with the app known as car buying, which is currently rolled out in 23 states across the United States.
I'm not that familiar with that. I'm spending most of my time trying to pour through the 35,000 pages that were released yesterday, and what I found out, our page is completely redacted, entire flight logs completely redacted. So this is a non-release, and the danger that Republicans are running, particularly the administration right now, is recreating the debacle that Attorney General Bondi had when she gave out the binders, and everybody took it home and found out this information they already had. What we need from this oversight committee investigation.
President Trump is directing the Justice Department to investigate Democrats allegedly connected to sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Files subpoenaed from the sex offender's estate show Epstein was actively shopping his political and financial knowledge to major players even after he was convicted on sex trafficking charges. Some of Epstein's emails also reference President Trump by name. The president has denied any wrongdoing and any knowledge of Epstein's crimes. Now he says questions into his relationship with Epstein are a scam, quote, with all arrows pointing to the Democrats, and that he cut ties with Epstein after Epstein's 2019 arrest. Meanwhile, a growing number of bipartisan Congress members are pressuring the Justice Department to release more of its files on Epstein. ABC News Washington Bureau Managing Editor Catherine Falders and White House correspondent Karen Travers are here with more on that story. Hi to you both. So, Karen, what's the latest on President Trump's call to investigate Democrats he says have ties to Epstein?
This was in a social media post earlier this morning, Diane. The president says he is directing the Attorney General Pam Bondi, the Justice Department, and the FBI to investigate a list of people. He says Bill Clinton, Larry Summers, J.P. Morgan, and others to see their ties to Jeffrey Epstein. And he says that the investigation at this point, or this whole issue related to him, is just a hoax. We're calling it back to the Russia investigation into him in that first term. He says, quote, all arrows pointing to the Democrats. Certainly the president is trying to shine the spotlight away from him and the messages now that have had his name in it and any connection that he has to Jeffrey Epstein, and put it on Democrats, high-profile Democrats. He has also said that Democrats have been doing this week, releasing those emails earlier and pushing for more transparency and the full release of the Epstein files in order to distract from what's actually happening in Washington. He says it's to distract from the government shutdown and the fact that they did not get any of their demands on health care when they were shutting down the government for the last couple of weeks. So again, the president trying to now call on the Justice Department to launch this investigation. We've seen him do this before. Now we have to see what the Justice Department will actually do with this demand from the president.
So, Catherine, what's in these files related to President Trump, and what Democrats are named in these files?
Well, I think there's a lot going on here. I think we can't really answer that question with certainty as to what Democrats are named in the files in question that Trump is talking about. Obviously, this is all a reaction to what the House Oversight Committee released, those documents from the Epstein estate. But the point is, he's asking his Justice Department and FBI to investigate. Well, remember, they have a treasure trove of documents that they're sitting on that they haven't yet publicly released. So what exactly is the nature of that investigation? What does that mean? I know that when Todd Blanche, the Deputy Attorney General, sat with Ghislaine Maxwell, down in Florida a few months back, I believe in July, he asked about specific Democrats, and Maxwell didn't have any particular recollection over some of those questions that Blanche probed her on. So the nature of the investigation, what Trump wants DOJ exactly to investigate, is pretty much entirely unclear, other than what Karen just laid out. Specifically in his post, Reid Hoffman, Bill Clinton, Larry Summers. I know that Blanche asked Maxwell about Clinton specifically and Hoffman. What else does the president want here? It's very clear that he just wants this probed to distract from himself being in the files, whether there's any criminal liability or not, and turn the tables and shift this over to Democrats.
And Karen, President Trump is criticizing Republicans who say they will vote to force the Justice Department to release its files on Epstein. Why?
So first you start with the 4 that voted for the discharge petition this week. And there was a pressure campaign to get some of them to switch their vote and not be in favor of that. But now next week that will go forward. And the expectation is the House will vote on that to compel the Justice Department to release the Epstein files. And it looks like you could have dozens of House Republicans voting in favor of it, maybe 40 to 50 lawmakers. The president, though, is already criticizing Republicans who have been pushing for this, saying they are weak. He says they have fallen into the clutches of Democrats because they are soft and foolish. And now the big question is, if this likely passes the House, what happens in the Senate? That is much more unclear. And if it were to get across the finish line in the Senate, it is unlikely, of course, that the president would sign it.
Catherine, what are you watching for next?
Well, I think it's exactly what Karen just laid out there in terms of the process here. If it passes the House, goes to the Senate. If it does happen to pass in the Senate and then gets to Donald Trump's desk, will he sign this? The answer is probably not. The politics, though, are quite interesting. If it passes in both chambers of Congress, Republican-led chambers of Congress, and then makes it to the president's desk and he doesn't sign it at all, that he's going to have to answer why, and why his White House cares so much, for example, about pulling Lauren Boebert's name off of that discharge petition. Of course, she didn't ultimately do that, but if it's not that big of a deal, if they are being transparent, then why behind the scenes is it quite the opposite? So we'll have to see what happens on that front next.
All right, we will. Karen Travers, Catherine Falders, thank you.
Pretty picture of the Capitol there, and somewhere inside that Capitol is our next guest, making her way up the stairs as we speak. She's one of only 4 Republican lawmakers who helped force a vote to release all of the files in the investigation of convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Now, the House is expected to vote next week on a bill to release the files after a bipartisan petition to force the vote finally got enough signatures. And all of it comes after a new batch of Epstein's private emails were released, a batch that mentions President Trump multiple times. Some GOP leaders and the president oppose the release of these documents, and the president denies any wrongdoing, hasn't been accused of wrongdoing. Only on CBS Mornings, we are joined now by Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. Congresswoman, good morning. I want to begin.
Thanks for having me.
Good morning to you. I want to begin with the release of the Epstein files, the vote to release those files. You are on the side of releasing them, and you're on that side despite President Trump saying that only a very bad or stupid Republican would be standing where you are. Why is this so important to you?
It's for the victims. These women have been waiting, some of them for decades. I talked to several victims that were raped by Jeffrey Epstein back in the 90s. And so this is information that has needed to come out for a very long time, and the American people have demanded it. And so the American people deserve to see transparency from their government. Rich, powerful people should not be protected. That is completely wrong. And it's a message to victims everywhere, victims of rape, human trafficking, and children who are trapped in terrible situations, that the government will not protect the predators, that we will work hard to protect the victims.
So, Congresswoman, that all sounds reasonable. A lot of people agree with you. And so the question comes to mind, why is GOP leadership and the president himself so opposed to letting these files be released? As the Wall Street Journal put it, he looks like he has something to hide, even if he doesn't. So put on your political hat here. Why is he so opposed?
Well, you know, I've talked to many of the women, and the women themselves have said that Donald Trump did nothing wrong. And even their attorney said that Donald Trump was the only one that helped them. So I'll just being very honest with you, it's something that I don't understand. I think it's a huge miscalculation, and I truly just stand with the women, and I think they deserve to be the ones that we're fighting for.
You can understand, Congresswoman, how in the absence of a compelling why, a reason from the White House, people jump to conclusions and assume the president must be implicated in some way. And then we have all of this new information that came out both from Republicans and Democrats. I know you were going through it as of Wednesday. I'll just highlight one email that's getting a lot of attention here. It's from Jeffrey Epstein in 2011, and he says, "The dog that hasn't barked is Trump." The email goes on from there. We don't understand the context. What do you make of this?
I don't know, not understanding the context of their conversation. And of course, Jeffrey Epstein is dead, so we can't ask him himself what that means. There's many conversations in these emails. There's tens of thousands of pages. That email in particular came from the estate. We subpoenaed the estate on the Oversight Committee. I'm part of that investigation. So it would be good to have further information there. But there's many people. And, you know, I've been looking at these emails, and I think it's a very interesting view into a world that most of us have never seen. It's like kind of like a web of global affairs, business connections, a very high and powerful people, foreign leaders, and it's just an interesting world, and even the intel community.
It is an interesting world. It makes me wonder, and I'll just put it baldly, do you think President Trump has something to hide here?
I don't, because I believe the women, and the women have said over and over again that Donald Trump did nothing wrong. Even Virginia Giuffre said it under oath, and she wrote it in her book. And so if we listen to the women, they say Donald Trump has done nothing wrong.
Congresswoman Gayle King here. We're very excited to have you because we've been trying to get you for a while, so we're glad you finally said yes. We're delighted to talk to you.
Thank you.
But I wanted to talk to you about this shutdown. There's been a lot of controversy about it. You know, many people are glad that it's over, but many of the Democrats are still upset about the Obamacare payments, how that's ended up. You seem to be siding with the Democrats on this. At one point, Hakeem Jeffries called Marjorie Taylor Greene an ally. So I'm wondering how you feel about this. Are you surprised yourself that you're aligned with the Democrats on some of these issues? And President Trump says you seem to have lost your way. Can you respond to both about you?
Well, first of all, I haven't lost my way. I'm for the American people only. I'm America first, and I make no apologies about that to anyone. And as far as health insurance is concerned, it hurt my own family. Back in 2010, the Democrats passed Obamacare. And in 2014, when it went into effect, my family's health insurance premium went from $800 to over $2,400 a month. And we've seen the health insurance industry prices just go up and up. And now that the ACA tax credits are expiring, which the Democrats did put in place, and they set the expiration date for this year, I see a financial crisis for Americans. And so on this issue, I don't see political party lines. I see simply that the American people have been done wrong. And I want my party to produce a solution and a plan that fixes this mess once and for all. And so that is what I've been urging here in Washington. And I really hope to see Republicans and Democrats both work together to come up with a very good solution with health care for the American people.
Yeah, everyone would want that. Congresswoman Greene, thank you very much for joining us and for running up the stairs to make it, and for apparently having an amazing cardio routine, because you're not even a little bit out of breath. So maybe share that online later. We do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Where are the remaining 98 hours of Epstein tapes? Wolf says he has 100 or so, maybe more. In that tape, he says, I have 100 of hours of him talking about Trump. So maybe he has even more of him just talking, period. 1 hour and 44 minutes were provided to the Daily Beast. A few minutes, if that, was played on Wolf's podcast. So what gives? Where's the rest of it? Well, we at the Megyn Kelly Show can confirm that more tapes do indeed exist. We know because my team and I have heard some of them. The tapes have not been made public because we have been told they are part of an unknown, unreleased project. Who's doing the project? Who now owns the tapes? I don't know. We do not have a copy of them, nor do we know the plans for them. But we do recall some of what we heard on them. We heard a conversation from April 2019, which is 5 months after Julie K. Brown's explosive reporting on Epstein that really led to the end for him and young women in the Miami Herald. That led to renewed national scrutiny on Jeffrey Epstein. It talked basically it was all about how Epstein had negotiated some 36 women coming forward, young women, 13 to 15, 13 to 16, coming forward against Jeffrey Epstein at the time. And the local PD, she wrote, was doing its job, trying to process all these claims. And then eventually it became so huge, they brought in the feds. This is under the George W. Bush administration. It was 2007 that this first unfolded. Obama didn't, take office till January of 2009. And so this thing was growing back then against Epstein. And that's when Alan Dershowitz came in. He represented Jeffrey Epstein, and he got him the sweetheart deal of the century, where they made all these women go away by not involving them in the plea. They didn't tell the women that they were copying a plea with this guy. They actually told the women that the case was ongoing, which is a violation of their rights and led in part to some of the payouts these women got. It's totally unfair to them. They never had their day in court because of what the feds did with Epstein at that time. They struck a sweetheart plea deal with him where he got to plead guilty to solicitation of prostitution from a minor, which is not a thing. Minors cannot prostitute themselves. That's called statutory rape. So that's what Epstein was going through. That's what they were suggesting. He was blaming on Trump, that Trump somehow dropped a dime on him at the time after this failed real estate deal or this fight they had over either real estate or, seeking girls at Mar-a-Lago. We just don't know. We've had different stories told to us. And he thought Trump was at the root of his legal problems. But now in 2018, Julie K. Brown of the Miami Herald stumbles on the whole thing. She sees this sweetheart deal. He served, like a year and a half on house arrest, 12 hours a day. We're outside of the prison. He was at his office in this cush environment. He was out of jail 6 out of the 7 days of the week. And so she blew the lid off of this, that this guy, Alex Acosta, who was the U.S. attorney at the time covering this area of Florida, struck this deal with Alan Dershowitz and Epstein's other lawyers. That was the deal of the century. He did have to register as a sex offender, and it allowed him to go on as a predator. That's really what was so controversial about it, among other things, really. And so she breaks this 10 years after he struck the deal, renewing massive amounts of scrutiny on Epstein. Alex Acosta, who by 2018 had become Trump's labor secretary. He wound up having to leave the post after this reporting. And that was, I think, November of 2018. It was July of 2019 that Epstein got charged as a serial prolific sex trafficker, right? So this Julie K. Brown article was explosive and did lead to all this renewed national scrutiny on Epstein. So this is where he's talking on the tape that we heard. It's April of 2019, just a few months after Julie K. Brown's reporting, but 3 months before Epstein would actually be arrested on the new, gravely serious charges of sex trafficking minors. On the tape that we heard, 4 power brokers are in a room. They are brainstorming public relations strategies. The goal, to try to rehabilitate Epstein's image. Epstein's there. Steve Bannon is there, obviously a major player on the right. Michael Wolff is also there. But he is not just a journalistic observer. He is an active participant, providing Epstein with his own PR advice. This tracks with an extraordinary email exchange released yesterday between Wolff and Epstein from 3 years earlier, from a few years prior to this 2019 email that we heard. It is dated December 15th. Is it 2015 or 26? Yeah, okay. It's December 15th, 2015, and carries over to December 16th, 2015. This in this exchange, Wolff sounds, when he's writing to Epstein, more like a crisis PR rep than he does an independent journalist, which he purports to be, by the way. On December 15th, 2015, Wolff tells Epstein, quote, "I hear CNN is planning to ask Trump tonight about his relationship with you, either on air or in scrum afterward." There was a CNN debate that night. Epstein responds that same day, quote, "If we were able to craft an answer for him, what do you think it should be?" Wolff responds the next day on the 16th, quote, "I think you should let him hang himself. If he says he hasn't been on the plane or to the House, then that gives you a valuable PR and political currency. You can hang him in a way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you. Or if it really looks like he could win, you could save him, generating a debt." CNN did not ask Trump about Epstein at all that night. And in another stunning email, Wolf in October of 2016 writes to Epstein, quote, "There's an opportunity to come forward this week and talk about Trump," this is right before the election, "in such a way that could garner you great sympathy and help finish him. Interested?" Wolf posted a video on social media yesterday responding to these disclosures from these emails, but he did not address any of the ethical issues about his relationship with Epstein as a so-called journalist. Instead, as you're now seeing in a pattern of events, Michael Wolff went after Donald Trump.
I have been trying to talk about this story for a very long time now. And this is, well, perhaps we're getting close to the smoking gun. Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump had the closest of relationships for more than a decade. It's curious that Epstein's relationship with so many people in public life has damaged them considerably. But the one person who he was closest to has not been held accountable. That's Donald Trump. I released tapes of Epstein talking about this relationship before the election to really little effect. What was Donald Trump's relationship to Jeffrey Epstein? What's the nature of that relationship? What did they do together? And anything, I think, that can bring us closer to an answer to that question is central to our time.
Now, let's be clear. When Michael Wolff released those excerpts that landed with a thud in October, on October 31st and via the Daily Beast, November 2nd, the election was November 5th of 2024, he wanted to sink Trump. That seems clear. Why would he hold back the most damning piece of the tapes? If he has more, if he's got Epstein on tape making it clear Trump trafficked girls, something equally awful, don't you think Michael Wolff would have released that days before the election? So while he says we're getting close to the smoking gun, it seems clear to me he doesn't have it. He doesn't have it. I think it's clear he would have released it. But back to what I do believe he does have. I only know a sliver of it. He knows the rest, and I don't know whether he's ever going to show us on the rest of those tapes. But I want to go back to what we heard and the room with Epstein, Wolff, Bannon, and one other person, a woman. We can at this time exclusively reveal that the fourth party in that room, never before publicly identified, was former Obama White House counsel Catherine Rumler. Ms. Rumler is all over the emails that just hit yesterday, which show a very friendly relationship between her and Jeffrey Epstein. She reportedly even showed up to Epstein's 2019 sex trafficking arraignment. In Wolff's 2021 book, all right, now try to keep it straight because we're going to tell you about a meeting that was from April 2019. Jeffrey Epstein allegedly killed himself in August of 2019, 1 month after he'd been charged with all these crimes. And then in 2021, Wolff wrote another book. In 2018, he had written Fast or Fury and Fire, whatever it was, Fire and Fury. And then in 2021, after the meeting that we're discussing with you right now, he wrote another book called Too Famous. And in that book, he revealed parts of this conversation I'm telling you about right now. But interestingly, he holds a few things back. He does not reveal, for example, this attorney's identity. In the audio we heard, she's referred to as White House counsel and Kathy, so it's pretty clear to us who it is. Now that we see her all over the email correspondence, even more so. We reached out to Ms. Rumler on our reporting that she was in this meeting with Epstein, and she declined to comment. The tenor of the conversation is friendly and upbeat. It sounds like friends having a good time, laughing and joking as they try to come up with ways to spin a known sex abuser back into the good graces of the public. And just it's interesting. Keep in mind, this is after he knows at this point about the Julie K. Brown reporting, and he knows additional legal charges could come his way. That's what's interesting about the timing of this tape that we heard. All right, so it's happening months before he would wind up dead. The discussion in the audio begins with a bizarre and flippant conversation about prostitution and whether the average prostitute is underage or not. Again, reminder, Epstein pleaded guilty in 2008 to solicitation of an underage prostitute. Insert my refrain about how that's an impossibility. He raped a young girl. He didn't solicit a prostitute who was underage. That's not a thing. Bannon then quickly tries to change the topic, expressing his opinion that the core accusations against Epstein, that he is a rapist and a pedophile who is trafficking underage girls to his rich friends, are not true. Bannon says Epstein does not have a legal strategy problem, but that his PR problems are metastasizing. Bannon suggests a year of media training so Epstein could do an interview on a program like 60 Minutes. And both Bannon and Rumler expressed regret that Charlie Rose, who was brought down by a sexual harassment scandal of his own in 2017, was no longer available to do an interview on his show. Yes, he would have been a friendly. They were not wrong about that. Wolf then brings up Gayle King as a possible interviewer. Bannon notes R. Kelly's disastrous interview with her went south because, in his view, R. Kelly didn't prepare. Note to Gayle, it's not a great thing when they're talking about who could we get to do a softball interview, and you are the second one mentioned after only sex pest Charlie Rose. So telling, these windows into these backroom conversations. Wolf documented some of this conversation I'm telling you about, though notably not all, in that book I mentioned called Too Famous, which hit in 2021, revealing that Rumler chimed in, he doesn't name her, that she did not want Epstein videotaped in preparation for any interview with a 60 Minutes or whomever, because it could be subject to a subpoena. Listen to this exchange on the audiobook of Too Famous that begins with the attorney we are now identifying as Rumler in her argument with Steve Bannon.
I'm not opposed to media training. I just don't want a videotape out there. He's got to sit there and watch the tape all the time. That's how you learn.
Does it feel inevitable now that this, one, the vote will happen, and two, the Justice Department will release the files, Joe?
Well, I mean, the vote will happen, right? I think that's inevitable. That's happening. The House is going to vote on it. I think the House passes it. I think enough Republicans defect. That part's not in question. What does the Senate do is kind of the next question. What does the president do? Does he veto any legislation? Those are the kind of things that are still a TBD, right? We don't know how that would.
Do you think it's possible for the president to veto this legislation?
I think it'll be very hard. The reality is this really has the remnants of the Russia collusion scandal, in my opinion, right? It's the same thing. It's a distraction. It's an attempt of the Democratic Party to distract the president in an otherwise successful opening first year. That's what's happening. The reality, though, is that if you look at the Russia collusion, if you think back to the Russia collusion, the complexity, they had to get MI6 to make some fake dossier and get everyone riled up about that. Now they just redacted the woman's name who actually said that Trump didn't do anything wrong. This is embarrassing. This is an embarrassing PR stunt by the Democrats to try to distract from the shutdown that's now ended. They're trying to move on to something else. Epstein is a sexy topic. We all talk about it in our private lives. We talk about it at the water cooler. Democrats know that media will repeat every talking point they spew out there. And here we are.
I'm sorry. What's embarrassing, honestly, is sitting around covering up for child trafficking. It's not the Democrats who made up child trafficking. It's not the Democrats who made up Jeffrey Epstein as a prosecuted child trafficker. It is the reality of the situation. And honestly, the reason why everyone is suspicious about Donald Trump is because he's acting suspicious. It's came out that his name was in the Epstein files, and then he had his own personal lawyer go negotiate the deal with Ghislaine Maxwell, who went from high security prison to basically summer camp. And I am so sorry. No, I'm so sorry. Let me just finish.
Email.
Literally, the Epstein emails say, I can take down Donald Trump. Now, why would he be able to take down Donald Trump unless Donald Trump knows something?
Because he's a bad person who could very easily use that kind of notoriety to take on someone.
He's also a BS artist. Jeffrey Epstein was a notorious BS artist, but that's not the point.
The point here is, why are we pretending as if these documents might actually get released by the Department of Justice?
You
There
really
is
think it's never?
No way,
Why?
no chance.
Why do you say that?
Why? Because now.
Because then he's guilty.
No,
then
no,
you're
no, no,
admitting Donald Trump is guilty.
I'm talking about
why
the politics.
Would they not,
you want to hear? I'll explain. It's not complicated. It's really simple. The Senate is either not going to take it up, and B, the notion that Trump won't veto this. Since when is Donald Trump afraid of taking a political hit? The idea that Donald Trump will see this on his desk and say, "Well, this is just too sensitive politically. I can't veto this."
They might have a, they might have a veto-proof majority.
They don't have a. We know they don't have a veto-proof majority. Let's not. Why are we pretending this is real? There's no chance. There's zero chance.
Here's the one real thing that we all. There are victims here that have been shouting for years.
But it's not going to
give
happen.
a damn about the victims.
It's not going to happen.
I actually think this fatalism, saying Trump will just absolutely veto, is actually an excuse for him. If he vetoes legislation, bipartisan legislation, and I have to say, if there is a vote in the House in which 100 House Republicans or 50 House Republicans vote for it, I want to say to every Republican senator, those victims will be dogging you every day, as will the American people. And
they don't care.
John Thune wants to stop. But look, it's getting results. There's a discharge petition, and Republicans are going to end up voting for it. That is getting results. And if Donald Trump vetoes this legislation, then he might as well just say,
I don't even know if he'll make it out of the Senate, by the way.
Nobody cares, though. That's what I'm saying. They don't. That's the unfortunate part.
That is not true.
Nobody cares what do you mean?
Nobody cares if Donald Trump vetoes it. To Dan's point, he doesn't give a damn about somebody saying, "Oh my God, you vetoed it. I can't believe you vetoed." He has no problem taking a political hit.
Keep going.
What I'm saying, they don't. We're not.
This issue did not come up once during the election. Let's be clear about that.
Let me be clear.
It did not come up.
Let me be clear. It's the right thing to do to release the files. I want to be clear about that. It's the right thing to do. Donald Trump doesn't care about the right thing to do. So to deal with the reality of where we are, if Democrats are, if they want to use this for their message and say, look, he didn't veto it, he vetoed it, I just don't think that's going to move his voters. This man said he can stand in New York and kill somebody and there will be no consequence.